there's a chat box, and we've already been exchanging a few hellos and welcomes, and so it's great that you've been able to join us today. We are, I think, recording this session, so after it ends, we'll send you the presentation, the PowerPoint, and the recording, and I think we'll be inviting you to give us some feedback as well. So, Denise, perhaps, is there anything you think I've forgotten for the time being?
Hello, Claire. No, I think that's everything. But just from me as well, welcome to everybody. As Claire said, I will send you the recording and a copy of Sheena's presentation after the event, and I hope you all find it very useful. Thank you.
Okay, I think that's over to me.
Yes, it is, Sheena. I've just transferred the controls to you.
Thank you. And for some reason, my video went off then. Right.
There we are. We can see you now.
Sorry?
We can see you now.
That's good. First of all, let me add my welcome to that of Claire and Denise. It's lovely to be able to be in contact with so many different people from so many different places. And like Claire has said, we all hope that you are fit and well at the moment, and your families and colleagues too. One of the reasons for doing this webinar is because we are all suffering from the effects of the pandemic. And if we can put the first slide up, what we're looking to do when we've got the slide, it's missing, is to actually look at what is the impact at the moment of the COVID-19 epidemic, because a lot of people aren't able to travel. London has just about to go into top tier and almost shut down yet again. And I'm sure that's the case for several of the countries that are represented in the group today, that your capitals and your big cities will be taking extra care. But that has an impact on what's happening in organisations. We know from a previous webinar that there's a big move for people to be safer working from home if they can, working on shift systems in offices if that makes operating at a distance from colleagues easier to do. And one of the things that we wanted to look at was how, in the midst of all of this, are you still going to be able to encourage people to learn at work? So we're going to look at the challenges that we are faced with. I don't know why the slides aren't changing. Here we go. That's better. We're going to look at the challenges that people are facing at the moment. The pressures on managers and leaders to motivate and upskill staff right now are bigger than they've ever been before. We want to make sure that any training policies that are still valid get implemented, and that we're gathering the right information to make sure that the right people still get to learn and to be trained on the job. And we're going to look at how you assess value for money in all of this, because training has got to be targeted where it's needed, and the needs might have changed over recent months, and they may be changing again in the future. And then the most important thing, I think, from this webinar is how can we get really creative, and how can we innovate new approaches to learning? How can we roll up our metaphorical sleeves and make sure that we become trainers day to day? So, summarising, we've got additional pressures on all organisations. We know that even in normal times, when times get tough, budgets get affected because money has to be diverted to different priorities. And even in normal times, often the first casualty of budget cuts is the budget for training and development. Right now, we need to look at how in this crisis can we become creative? Can we look at how to turn the crisis into an opportunity without that sounding like a cliche, and look at creative ways of not only increasing the capacity of our people, but the resilience of ourselves and of our staff. And hopefully in this session, we will all share some ideas on how we can do this. What we will do first off is do a quick poll, as this technology allows us to do, which is basically flagging up a few questions and asking you to vote. Where would you put yourself? So, for example, has the pandemic affected your organisation's approach to training yourself and your staff? At the moment, is all your training on hold? Has it all been cancelled? Have you switched, like some organisations and schools have had to do, to online seminars and lectures? And are you doing more as a manager to coach and use the workplace as a learning laboratory? So tick whichever ones of those actually apply, and let's see what the group actually looks like. I'll give you a minute or so to do that. I think we've still got some people thinking about this.
Sheena, I've just shared the results with everybody. It
Fine.
looks like not everybody yet has answered, but it is quite a even spread. We have 4 people at the moment that have said they're using online seminars,
Yeah.
3 that have said that all training is on hold or cancelled, and 2 that are acting as a manager in the workplace. We're
Okay.
still getting people answering, so we'll keep that poll open during the course of the webinar. It's
That's lovely. Thank you, Denise. Well, I'm really pleased to see that not all training is on hold or cancelled, although for some of our participants that is the case. And maybe you could put on the chat room why that is. Is it because you just can't do it, or is it because budgets have had to be diverted somewhere else? The vast majority are actually using online seminars and lectures, and that's good. So that means that you've actually created some learning opportunities for your people, and a couple of people who are doing much more as a manager and as a coach in turning the workplace into a learning laboratory, which I frankly don't think we do enough of, to be honest, because learning at work is a really useful thing to do, and getting managers involved in coaching people on the job is getting to be more and more important. So let's have a look at decision makers. This isn't just intended for people who are working in HR and are maybe organising training. This is also looking at people who make decisions about how we invest in training. What sort of information do we need to know to make sure that we make proper decisions and evidence-based decisions? So a short checklist here is, to what extent do you actually anticipate the future? We haven't got crystal balls, but on the other hand, we do need to be able to plan ahead and look ahead to things like technology developments, changes in mandate, changes in the law, changes in the size and structure of our organizations, and to say, well, what impact is this going to make on the way that we do our business? And if the business is going to change, and if the organization is going to change direction or priorities, then that means that the skill base and the skills balance has got to be addressed, even if it's only to confirm that what's going on is the right thing right now. But if you need future capabilities, then you need to know what is the direction of travel for the organization in order to determine what those future capabilities should be. And then the other question we need is, well, how many people is this going to affect? Is it going to be huge numbers, in which case that takes you down a certain route as to how you train lots of people? And this is where technology-based training could be very, very useful, or paper-based training. Or is it just for a small number who need their skills topping up? Some of the data that is available and that can be used to predict or determine gaps in knowledge and skills and competencies. Have you got a skills audit in place? Have you got a competency framework that you're using, and competency gaps that have been identified and tracked over time? What does the performance appraisal system tell you? Are your people getting to be more skilled? Are the gaps narrowing? Are the gaps changing? And are those gaps in attitude, in skills, in knowledge, motivation? All of that is on record somewhere in the organization, whether it's locally with the managers or centrally within the HR function. And then what are those other things that need to be considered? What career paths are people following? Do you have specialists who need to get experience as generalists? Generalists who need to be more targeted in the way that they're developing their skills and competence in specialisms? What are the key jobs, and have you got bench skills like a football team would have? What are the key positions, the critical jobs, the ones that will really affect the capability of the organization if somebody moves on or moves out? So what are we doing to back up to make sure that we've got people with those skills in reserve and who are standing in reserves for key jobs, excuse me. And then, of course, we've got to pay for it. So what is the budget for all of this? What are the priorities? What resources have we got in place in order to fund the priorities on training, and to make sure that those evidence-based decisions are informing how the spend should be invested? Let's just have a quick look at the chat room. Okay. Couple of comments which are understandable, that online learning is very good. Yes, online training, but if the technology isn't too good, then that means that the learning is affected. And yeah, I would second that. What my local university is doing is they're pre-recording a lot of sessions, and perhaps that's something that you could consider. Certainly a client that PAI and I are working with at the moment, because of time differences and the fact that people are in lockdown, we're thinking of putting some of the sessions on record so that people can switch them on and follow them as they need to. And that might be a little bit easier than trying to do it with intermittent internet connections. Okay, so another poll. Give this a few thoughts. Where do you currently get the information from? How do you make good decisions about learning and training? Do you rely on your HR department? Is it senior managers and top managers who get this information so that they can make strategic decisions? Do you ask people who use your services and the stakeholders who've got an interest in the way your service is delivered? So this might be customers, it might be suppliers, it might be legislators. Do you talk to training suppliers about what they see about information about the way that they train your people? Or do you just get requests from individuals saying, it's about time I had a training course, please can I have some investment in me? Let me give you a couple of minutes to respond to that. Are you able to access the poll?
Sheena, I have launched this one, but my system seems to be very slow. So,
Right.
although launched the poll, it's not showing on the screen as having started. So it doesn't look like people have been able to respond yet.
Okay, Denise, thank you. I knew I was tempting fate when I mentioned the reliability of technology in circumstances like this. Maybe we can come back to that, but perhaps on the chat room, if you could respond, where do you currently get information to make good decisions about training and development? Who do you listen to? Who do you talk to? Who do you ask questions of? Just put your comments up on the chat room and then we'll come back to those. Okay.
Sheena, we do have a few comments now on the poll.
Oh, good.
If you'd like to take a look, but it seems that most people do get their information from their HR
HR.
and then from senior managers.
Right. Good. Okay. So do I infer from that that HR makes the decisions? Let me go back. HR makes the decisions about training, or do they make sure that you are informed about what training and development is available for people? It does suggest that there's a sort of centralization on the approach, but let's have a look. We'll expand that as we go on. Value for money. There's an old story that from one of the big marketing executives of one of the big corporations in America, when asked how did he know how well his marketing budget was going, and he used to say 50% of the marketing spend is really good value, but the problem was deciding which 50% was the proportion that was working. So sometimes you have to kind of put your faith in making sure that the investment is properly targeted. But the closer we can narrow that gap between 50-50, then the better. Otherwise, we're just sticking a wet finger in the air and hoping rather than using evidence. We need proper information. And if you get the information from the HR department and senior managers, then that's great. But do question whether or not you're getting the right quality of information to be able to make decisions about the training programs that you should be supporting for your people, and whether you continue with them, whether you change them. And what should be available are things like the standard evaluation about learning events, whether that's training programs or conferences. What do people think about them? Were they useful? Did they meet their objectives? Do people feel that they spent their time well? What sort of impact studies have been done? If the training is meant to change people's behaviour, then what's in place to measure that? What does the performance appraisal system show? If you're looking for performance improvements, how are those being measured and how are they being collated? And what do you notice? Because as decision makers, you will be looking out for these changes once you've invested in training and development and learning. And there should be some way in which you can see and which you can hear people talking about at ground level. So we need to make sure we've got the right quality data, the right quantity of data to inform our decisions or to make different decisions in the future. Let's just go back to that poll and see if we've got any more responses. Yeah, the picture is still the same, mainly HR, some for senior managers, some people talking to trainers, but not talking to individuals themselves. Okay, so as decision makers, what can you do to make sure that you get a good return on investment and that the training budget, however weak or strong it is actually targeted in the right places? As managers, which I'm assuming you all are to a certain extent, whether you're managing large teams, small teams, projects, or just your own work plan, if you're responsible for decisions about other people's training, then make sure that they know why it is that they're undergoing some of this training. Make sure that the performance appraisal discussions that are recorded and any development that comes out of that, whether it's a personal development plan or a decision to invest in career paths or succession planning or skills upgrade, and make sure that you share those objectives. Why are they doing this? What standard do you expect as a result of this? And what performance gap are you addressing, so that they go into that training and that learning with their eyes and ears wide open? Personal development planning, really, really useful. Everybody should have one. And I hope you've all got one whilst you're getting involved in this. What is your development plan? And it's not a remedial thing. It's not about pointing out people's deficiencies. It's actually saying, me right now on my career path, working in this organization, where am I going and what do I need in order to fulfill my potential? You can provide feedback to individuals, groups, and organization as a whole. Performance feedback, we've already covered on that. Team feedback on how a group is responding. Project team feedback, how well are they doing? Lots of organizations focus an awful lot on what is being done, not necessarily on how it is being done, how well, and why is it being done. If you come across a good means of learning, something that really works for your people, is there a means of sharing that with colleagues and maybe posting it on an intranet or into the HR decision making? How well do you use the performance appraisal system? For a lot of organizations, sadly, including in the UK, in my history working here, the appraisal system is seen as an annual chore that HR insists on people filling out forms that then go into the HR system and are filed. That's the worst case scenario. What we really want to do is to make sure that the appraisal system addresses performance gaps, competency gaps, and actions to meet them. All that the form filling should be is a summary of where are we now, where are we going, and how are we going to get there. And the more that you can work that system to be meaningful for you, for your people, as well as for the HR function, then the better. Mention clarifying performance objectives and the reason for going on training. Talk to people before they go on an event. Talk to them when they come back. Make sure that it's actually done what it said it would do and that you can rely on it for future decisions. Manager mentoring and coaching others. We've got some people who are saying that they're doing that regularly. Please let us know how you're doing that. Put a notice on the chat room. Let us know what challenges you face in that and what successes you've had, because it is becoming much more common that managers are mentoring and coaching people. Those two terms do become interchangeable. As a mentor, you can mentor anybody in the organization or outside. It usually means that you've got something to offer somebody less experienced. Coaching usually means that you are focusing on somebody's personal development plan and you're helping them to improve. And that could be somebody in your own team. It could be a peer. It could be somebody in another part of the organization. You can create learning experiences. So, for example, who do you know who is a good role model? Who do you know who is really good at something, say, project management, team leadership, communication? What can your people who've got a performance gap learn from them by observing, by shadowing them? Could they be seconded for a week to another part of the organisation to find out how they work, so that they expand their own knowledge base and understand more how the organisation is working? Buddying systems are getting to be more and more popular. We tend to find those in onboarding and in new people joining a unit or joining an organisation, but it can also happen throughout the organisation, where somebody takes somebody else under their wing and helps them to be introduced to something relatively new in a way that accelerates their learning. Sabbaticals and exchanges, time out. Some administrations, you can earn time out. So, for example, as well as having incremental points on a salary scale, you can take on time out that is due to you, not just annual leave, but something that you can invest in your learning and your career development. Thinking of an example that I came across some years ago, which was the teaching setup in Australia, where for so many years of work, you can earn so many days. And those days you're allowed to invest in your learning and your career development. And you can choose how to do that. You could go on a course, you could go traveling, as long as it's focused on your personal development and it's agreed with the organization, then you can earn that time out. Or you could do an exchange. You could actually swap a member of staff, so that you know that you can offer somebody some development and they can go and expand their own knowledge and their skills and their attitudes by working somewhere else in the organization. As a manager and as a decision maker or a project leader, you could set up an action learning set or something that is called a challenge and support group. And this is really where you turn the job into a learning laboratory. Again, quoting an example, I remember a woman who worked in the Lagos pensions function, and she would get her staff together about once a week, and they would have a look through the most challenging cases that they dealt with that week, so that everybody got a chance to examine what the problem was, how it was dealt with, what they could learn to transfer that knowledge and information to other experiences. And it built up the communication in the team, but it also produced better decisions about the quality of the work. The challenge and support comes from the fact that you allow people to challenge one another. You allow them to say, I don't think that idea would work, or have you tried this, or why don't we think about doing it this way? But it's always done in a supportive way. It's not done in a critical way or in a way to put people down. So the whole notion is about improving the process of the work, improving people's confidence in the work. And action learning is something that is highly recommended. I've already mentioned onboarding. Onboarding sometimes can be really not as effective as it should be, let's put it that way. It quite often focuses on, this is the organization chart that you're joining. Here is a whole pile of leaflets that we need you to read. This is what your job will eventually be like. But there should be another element of really good onboarding, and that should be about making people feel welcome, making them feel that they have potential, making them feel that they are going to be invested in. And so if you are still recruiting at this time, and I know some organizations are, even though they are trying to do it remotely and online, then make sure that the recruitment decisions are backed up by really professional and useful onboarding, especially if you've got additional difficulties to face whilst organizations and officers are working in restricted circumstances because of the pandemic. Use communication and team meetings to review how people are doing. An awful lot of meetings focus on the business, and rightly so. That's why people get together. But if you can add at the end of most meeting agendas, whether it's a Zoom meeting, whether it's face to face, if you can still do that, just add in a 5 minute to 10-minute agenda right at the end, an item that basically asks, how are we doing? How are we doing as a team? What are we doing well? What did we do well last week? What do we need to face in the coming weeks? Where do we need help? Where do we need to change the way in which we are doing things? And that gives people the chance to examine the process and the way in which work is being done, and the team as a whole will learn from that just by building it into the normal meeting agenda. And then the other thing that you can do as a manager and as a decision maker is let people know what's available that they can get for free. And these are English language resources, the TED Talks. I'm sure some of you will have come across those. Widely available, 15 minutes, do it in your own time, huge resource for you to learn anything from leadership through to self-confidence. Doesn't take a lot. You will pick up a nugget of information that you can take forwards. And then the online programs that might be available from your own local colleges or universities, or even commercial training organizations. They may be doing webinars similar to this, or just podcasts to update you on what's going on. But keep an eye out for those things. Have a pool of resources. Let people know that that's what you're interested in. Ask them to tell you when they've got something that's actually useful. Let me just pause there. Put on the chat room, and I think we've got some chats, which might be more than hellos. Let's have a look. Consulting with stakeholders, online training, yep. Let me just pause on that particular thing in terms of what you can do. Put some comments on the chat room about the things that you are doing whilst possibly you're not able to promote training courses, sponsor training courses. What is it that you are doing to get the best out of training decisions, training investment, using the job as a laboratory? Just share some things, because these are going to be ones where you can share with your colleagues and your peers. I have a theory that all training is theft. So the more that you can put on the chat room, the more that people can take away. Somebody wants to know how to develop skills as a coach in the workplace. Maybe those people who are doing coaching, have you got any hints and tips that you can put on the chat room for them? Yeah. How to educate senior managers in the quality of the decisions. Ooh. Anybody got any hints and tips to help there? I'll pick up those in just a moment. Okay, we'll come back to the chat room. How do you get senior managers to be more knowledgeable? I think this comes back to the data. What information is being fed to them to make those decisions? I'm presuming they're not being willfully blind to training needs, learning needs in an organization. So is there a quarterly report to them about the state of performance against competencies, about performance against a new system, about the implementation of new technology, a new mandate? What is the information that they are getting in order to form those judgments? And if you don't think that they're getting the right information, then I think one of the actions that we might take away from this is, how can you feed good quality information up the line to make sure that senior managers know the quality of the decisions that they are making, and that they are not deciding in the dark or in a fog. Let's have a look at what you can encourage other people to do. Personal development planning, I mentioned earlier on, really, really important. Maybe we could take a quick straw poll right now, just literally answer yes or no. Do you have a personal development plan that you are working to and that is tailored specially for you? Let's have a quick straw poll. Yes or no?
Sheena, I'm just creating that as a poll right now for you.
Wow. Well done. Thank you, Denise. Let's do that. I'll come back to that. Take the lead on personal development planning and agreements. Make sure that the organisation has got a proper personal development planning system in place and not just a bureaucratic form filling exercise. Make sure that you, oops, I'm in the wrong one here. What am I doing? I'm going over again. Agree the personal development plans. Self-assessment. If you have a competency framework, if you have models of excellence, if you've got published role profiles, if you're part of a professional network. So, for example, you might be a procurement specialist, you might be an IT specialist, an HR specialist, a finance specialist. There will be models of excellence around, probably something that you're following through continuous professional development, and that you might not see that as being related to your workplace, and it should be, because the more competency that you can demonstrate through your profession, then the more impact that should have actually on your day-to-day job. And Denise has put a poll up, so let's see where we are. No votes yet about whether you have a personal development plan. Do access that and have a go, see what it tells us. Learning targets. Do you have learning targets? Do your people, even if they can't go on training programs at the moment, and even if they can't travel or go away on professional development qualification programs, then what can they do on their own? Self-directed learning through study, through research, through reading. As I mentioned, my local university is putting most of the learning online, pre-recorded, but also backed up with these are the resources you should be investing in the future and while you're actually learning now. What is it that people are aspiring to? Learning and development isn't always just about doing the current job better. It's actually making sure that people have got some sense of where it is they want to be as part of their lives, as part of their careers. Is there something that you could encourage them to do that would develop personal motivation and skills outside of work? Lots of people do really strong, responsible things in their communities, in their professions, and maybe not so much at work. But how much is this contributing to their personal development and to their skills, and how much do they feel able to share that actually at work, and let you know how they are developing? And do you encourage them to do this? And again, we're back to local colleges, universities, online learning. You don't have to sign up for a full program if you just want to do a module, or if you just want to do some online learning. Quite a lot of it is voluntary and you could just sign up. And then there's the big, massive open online courses, the MOOCs, where that is a free resource that's available internationally, where again, you can go in, register and sign up for a free resource that will just help you develop. Let's go back to that poll. Yay, that is the right answer. Now, for the 3 people who haven't got a personal development plan, the 12 people who say they have, put on the chat room the advantages that you see in having one. How do you make it work? Would you encourage people to have one? Would you encourage people to initiate one with their own managers? It doesn't have to be part of a system. You could actually have it as part of your own developmental conversation, build it in from your side to the personal appraisal. So we've got about 15 minutes left. These are particularly challenging times. What ideas have you got? What works for you in developing yourself and developing others? What ideas have you got to encourage people to have a personal development plan? Have any of you invested in self-development over recent months as an antidote to the fact that things are getting tough? Are you taking on new skills, new abilities? And are you enjoying it? Is it something that is giving you a payback? What ideas do you have for the future? Because we've got some optimism on the horizon in that some vaccinations are being approved, but they are going to take a while before they reach all of us. We don't expect it here amongst normal population, if I can put it that way, because the priorities for when we've got the vaccine are rightly to frontline care staff, to the elderly who are most vulnerable, and eventually they'll get round to people who are working in offices doing so-called normal work, sometime probably in late spring. So we've got a while yet before things will ever return to any sort of new normality. So what can we do to put things in place so that we don't go stale and so that we can make the right decisions, point people in creative directions and support them in learning? And then finally, I'll ask PAI to say what it is they might be able to do to help. So let's go back to the chat room and see what people are putting up. Yep, an endorsement of training needs, absolutely right. Make sure that you're forever tracking. This is Baba Umar. Oh dear, right, okay. We have some, even though you might be feeding people the right data and the right information, not necessarily being able to rely on senior managers to make the right decision. That's a local challenge. You might need to think about how you would work your way around that. Is there some way of making that decision making perhaps a bit more explicit through training and development policies, priorities, so that it becomes external to just senior management decision making, looking at the impact of past decisions and what the value for money might have been, so that you develop a business case for where future investment might go. Somebody who said, yeah, Yakubu, thank you. Good to have a personal development plan because it's a way of giving you direction in your career growth and your self-fulfillment. Brilliant answer. Yes, it is about self-fulfilling. It's about making sure that you know what your potential is and that you've got the ways and means of directing resources into supporting yourself. Who's doing some self-directed learning, who's doing some self-development, possibly not necessarily against a predetermined development plan, who's learning new skills to be more effective at work? Let's have some comments on the chat room. I had a message in a Christmas card that I received yesterday from a former colleague who I used to work with in the UK civil service. And he said, I've taught myself Spanish whilst I've been grounded and not working as busily as I would be normally. And my first reaction was, oh, great for you. And then the next sentence said, I didn't like it. So sometimes self-directed learning doesn't always work, but it's a way of filling the time. And at least you can say you've done it. Any more comments on the chat room? Okay, I don't think we're going to get any more there. Let me pass on to Denise or to Claire, depending on Denise's voice right now. Let me say thank you first.
Sheena,
Yeah.
sorry, you have a couple of more comments if you care to take a quick look.
Oh, good. Oh, excellent. Thank you. They came in after I thought that we weren't going to get any. Martha says, learning new skills in corporate governance, helping a lot in a current role. Martha, what made you do that?
Martha works as a board administrator for the Ugandan National Security Fund. Don't know if you know.
Right. Excellent. So identifying something that will help you in your current role, not necessarily going away on a training program for it, but knowing where to root out a resource that will help you develop skills in that area. And the payback will be that when it comes to things like board work in the fund, then you will be, yes, and having the time to do it right now, because business as usual is not taking up all of your time and energy. Thank you, Martha. And Love has said, more into projects, reviewing employers' requirement for construction of hospitals, reviewing contracts for contractors. Yes, taking stuff that's there. If you've got a quality management system, if you've got project reviews, if you've got documentation, making sure that they are doing what it is that they're supposed to do. That's a great source of data for intelligent decision making. So is this a time when you should be looking at whether or not specifications are just ritualistic or something that should be much closer to what it is you're looking, not just for now, but in the future? Are the contracts relevant? Are they squeaky clean? Do they meet things like your codes of practice, as well as legislation and budget and procurement rules? Good to have. I presume this one from George is about personal development planning. Good to have them as a guide on day-to-day running of the business. Yeah, you have needs too. That is a really important message, that yes, you're there to do a job, but the job should be meaningful. The learning should be meaningful. The work that you do should give you satisfaction, should give you motivation. And if a personal development plan can help you navigate through that, then that's a really useful thing to have. One of the things that I advise as a coach is we tend in jobs to go day to day, week to week, making sure that we're getting through what needs to be done. We don't take enough time to just step back and just say, okay, what have I done this week that I've done well? What have I done this week that I've got satisfaction from? What have I done this week that says that next time I face this problem, I know I will solve it quicker or better than I did before? And it's a way of having a dialogue with yourself about your own performance. And I would certainly recommend that. And right now, if you're not actually in an office and sharing the normal office buzz, somebody somewhere is going to have to give you positive feedback. So make sure it's you, that you're in the front of the queue for that. And I wish you well in it. So thank you very much for those comments. Thank you for the time that you've spent. Stay safe. Season's greetings to everybody for the end of this year. And let's hope that next year is going to be a safer and more productive one. And hopefully we will see you in future webinars. Let me pass you on to Denise or Claire.
Claire, I've just transferred control to you.
Lovely, thank you. I'm back, I think. Well, Here, Sheena, to what you were saying about everybody keeping safe and well, and hopefully 2021 being a slightly easier year, a more positive year for us all. That would be wonderful. And there is, as you rightly say, some optimism with vaccines being developed and already starting to be given to people in some countries. So thank you, Sheena. Thank you very much for your excellent presentation and for such a lot of discussion. You really got us thinking and talking in that session. I hope you've all enjoyed it. I certainly have. There was a question about what PAI can do to help. We, as some of you may know, offer quite a wide range of professional development workshops, normally face-to-face in London. We've been very much missing doing that this year since March. We have got a full program, planned for 2021. I think there's information already on the website about the schedule. Denise, whose email contact you'll see at the bottom of the slide, is always happy to provide you with more information about the workshops held most in London, but other locations as well. And we were thinking, of course, that if people are not able to travel or don't feel comfortable in traveling, that you could join remotely, and we can make arrangements for that. We're going to carry on into next year doing some more free webinars, because we think that they certainly have been very interesting, and we've done quite a wide range of subjects already. So keep an eye out for more of those. We'll keep you informed. Training and learning, very much our core business. We've done quite a lot of consultancy and advisory work too on things like training needs analysis and strengthening training curricula, and helping people with learning programs and with coaching, with leadership development as well. So I hope you'll keep in touch with us, and thank you so much again for joining us and sharing so generously both your time and your comments and your ideas. So I'd like to say a big thank you again to you, Sheena, to you, Denise, for organising us all today. It's bye-bye for now, but we will certainly be keeping in touch. And thank you again. Bye.
Bye, Claire.
Bye-bye.